All right, so extremely concerning tweet to see pop up on my page this morning that Victor Wembanyama is out for the season with a blood clot in his right shoulder, a deep vein thrombosis. I don't know what deep vein thrombosis is. Not a doctor. I'm not going to pretend to be educated on what this means. But it's extremely concerning. Anything blood clot related is scary, obviously. Definitely not something you ever want to see, but it's not something, to be fair, that is extremely unique to the NBA. It's something we've seen multiple times. I mean, Chris Bosh had blood clots that basically ended his career. Now, that was some sort of condition that caused them to repeat. He was getting blood clots in his lungs and they were happening like multiple times. And I think that was more concerning, and the NBA wouldn't basically clear him to return to basketball. Whereas, like a guy like Asar Thompson had a blood clot last season that ended his year. Christian Koloko missed like the last year and a half before this year or something along those lines with a blood clot as well. It's not something that is extremely unique, but it is concerning. There's no doubt about it. So number one, before I break into anything basketball related, I just want to say prayers to Wemby. I hope he is okay. I hope this clot has no effect whatsoever on his life outside of basketball. I hope it is something that can be treated quickly and treated efficiently and treated safely. And I also hope that it is an isolated condition, like the Spurs say. That would be an extremely important aspect of this, is that it is isolated and isn't something that returns, because that could jeopardize his career. And even more importantly than jeopardizing his career, it could jeopardize his life and quality of life. And that is extremely concerning. So fingers crossed it is, yes, an isolated condition, and the Spurs medical staff, or whatever medical staff he's dealing with, can treat it properly and figure out a way to prevent it from happening again. I don't know what caused this. I'm not going to speculate. I have no idea. But that is the number one priority before anything basketball related, is that it does not affect him long-term as a human being, and his quality of life and his safety of life. So that's first and foremost. Now, as a basketball channel, I do want to talk about what this means for the Spurs for the rest of the season and the regular season, and what this means for them going forward, because they still have Atlanta's first round pick this year unprotected, and they have their own pick. So they now have the opportunity to potentially finish with multiple lottery to high lottery picks. And let's look at things with the Spurs. Let's look at the standings. First and foremost, they are the 12th seed in the West right now. They're only a game and a half in front of the Trailblazers. And they've lost 7 of the last 10 games. They're not great. The addition of De'Aaron Fox was a move that sets them up successfully for the future, but they were not really even fully healthy, a team that was ready to compete for anything except for maybe a play-in spot here this season. And while this does definitely take them out of contention, and it's the type of thing that shapes up the rest of the Western Conference now, where 10 of these 11 teams above the Spurs are going to make the play-in, and there's going to be one team left out. There's going to be 3 teams in total out of the group of like Clippers to Suns, maybe Lakers to Suns, that misses the playoffs. I don't think the Lakers will be part of that. But so for the rest of the Western Conference, I think that almost is like a little bit of a sigh of relief in basketball terms, that they don't have to worry about the Spurs at all anymore in all likelihood. But for the Spurs specifically, with them still having their own pick, with them still having that unprotected Atlanta pick as well, they are all of a sudden looking at a position here where they could be in a very realistically pretty good draft spot. I mean, as of right now, Atlanta has the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. They have the 12th worst record in the league, so they have the 12th best draft odds. And the Spurs have the 10th worst record in the league and the 10th worst draft odds, or 10th best draft odds, I should say. And so that puts the Spurs in a position where Atlanta doesn't have Jalen Johnson for the rest of the year and traded DeAndre Hunter and got worse at the deadline. So they're clearly not really, despite not having their pick, they're probably not going to be all that good of a basketball team. Like, they're not going to outwardly tank, obviously, because it does them no good, but they're not going to be very good either. And there's certainly a chance they fall below the Heat, fall below a team like the Trailblazers, the Bulls potentially, or something like that. Or who knows, maybe the Sixers, if they can ever figure things out. I don't know what's going to happen. And I'm really not sure. Like, the Sixers should shut down Embiid for the season. Will they? I have no idea. That's a whole topic for a different video. But depending on how things shake up, you could be looking at a Hawks pick that is 10th, 11th, 9th, somewhere in that area, and a Spurs pick that if they fall below the Blazers and the Bulls and maybe another team or two, realistically, if they just fall below a couple teams and they have the 8th worst record in basketball, they could be looking at 2 top 10 picks very, very easily. Let me look at the Tankathon lottery odds, because I do want to see Where is the lottery odds? Pick odds right here. Here we go. I do want to look at see just as of right now what they would be looking at in terms of lottery odds. As of right now, Atlanta is not in the lottery, but Atlanta does have one of the worst records. So if they fall out of the lottery, or if they don't wind up making the playoffs, they will be in the lottery. And San Antonio right now has the 10th best lottery odds, which gives them almost about 15% chance at a top 4 pick. If they fall to like 8th, 7th, or 8th, you could be looking at a nearly 40% chance to a 30-something% chance at a like a 30 to 40% chance at a top 4 pick, potentially. Basically, not quite 40, but 30 to 35-ish. Either way, there is a real chance here that the Spurs end up with a couple of top 10 picks, and they will have an outside shot at a top 4 pick and an opportunity to draft a guy like Cooper Flagg or Ace Bailey or Dylan Harper or a variety of other guys. But the fact of the matter is, I still have not done all that much draft research for this year, and I need to start getting on that as we get closer to draft season. But I do know that this draft class is loaded, and that there is a very real possibility that the Spurs end up with a couple of top 10 picks, certainly a couple of lottery picks, and have the ability to make multiple additions here in this draft class that strengthen their roster going into the future, which is a good thing, because at the end of the day, this isn't a great team. I mean, Chris Paul and Wemby have by far the best plus minuses on the team, and I think in large part that is due for Chris Paul to playing with Wemby. As great of a player as he is and as smart of a player as he is now, he doesn't make a lot of mistakes, doesn't turn the ball over, great passer, still not the worst defensively. He's not the player he once was, but he's still a very useful player. Without Wemby, this team is going to fall off. Absolutely. He was a huge reason why they were successful. He was the biggest reason, I would say for sure, that they have been successful. And without him, they have a lot less reason to push De'Aaron Fox and try to get him to play every game and try to make a push towards the plan or anything along those lines. They can now really sit here and be okay with falling down another spot or two. In fact, that might be a good thing for this season, because the season's over, and that's okay. There's been a lot of progress and a lot of growth made this year for the San Antonio Spurs. And if I was a Spurs fan, I would be very encouraged about the future. You have multiple high-level assets in Wemby and De'Aaron Fox. You have a ton of draft capital still. They didn't have to give away some of their most valuable draft capital in order to get De'Aaron Fox. And they still have all their rotation guys. Stephon Castle is showing a ton of promise. Jeremy Sohan, Keldon Johnson, Devin Vassell, Julian Champagnie, I can go on. But all these guys who are their key rotation guys going into the future, plus their veteran player pieces in Chris Paul and Harrison Barnes, they have the opportunity to pretty much return a very similar core and a very similar roster that's going to continue to grow into their own next season. And they have the ability to add another couple of valuable young assets who have the real ability to potentially develop into valuable rotation pieces on this team. Look, at the end of the day, like I said at the beginning of the video, number one, first and foremost, is the health of Victor Wembanyama. But if he is okay and will be fine to return next season, and this is an isolated incident, then there is, I think, a silver lining here. If you want to look at it that way, I guess. And from a basketball perspective, I don't think this is the worst thing for the Spurs, assuming that all those things that I said about Wemby's health are true, because it sets them up to be even better positioned going into next season, having grown a lot this year, and then having the ability to grow even more and improve their roster going into next season without having to spend really any extra money or anything like that. Just gonna have to sign rookies and stuff. Like, they have a lot of flexibility roster-wise in terms of their assets, their cap situation, even a lot of different things that are in a positive situation for the Spurs, and it sets them up to push to be a playoff team next season. And that I think is an awesome place to be for the Spurs, a team that has had a lot of struggles the last few years. They're really well positioned for the future, and I do hope that this injury or this situation does not affect Wemby whatsoever, because if it doesn't, things will be all right in San Antonio. But again, praying for Wemby, praying for his family, praying that he is healthy and okay. And with that being said, that is going to do it for this video. I hope y'all did enjoy. If you did, make sure you hit that like button, leave a comment, and subscribe. I'll be back with more NBA content very, very soon. I appreciate y'all. Peace.